The OECD has also slashed Australia's growth estimate for 2026 to 1.8%. That's well below the RBA's own forecast of 2.3%. Treasurer Jim Chalmers is expected to use a speech today to warn about the negative impacts of Trump's trade war to growth and inflation. Chalmers will argue that Australia deserves better from a long-term partner and ally, but that the government will focus on resilience over retaliation. Let's get some more perspective on Australia's relationship with the US and the implications when it comes to how Beijing will navigate these waters, as all of these countries are navigating the looming trade war. Joining us now is the former US ambassador to Australia, Jeffrey Bleich. Jeffrey, an ambassador, really great to have you with us. And at this point, I suppose there's some solace in Australia being really in the basket of a number of other traditional US allies that are being treated the same way, if not worse, if you take a look at how Canada is going. Right? Do you think it's a matter of wait and see to see how much of Trump's rhetoric is translated into action, or do we really need to start rethinking about the sort of entire fabric of this trade and geopolitical and security alliance?
No, I don't think you need to rethink the entire fabric of the security alliance. It's a deep and valuable alliance for both countries, and it goes to our natural, affinity for one another, but also common values and a common approach. This is a break from some of the traditional American policy making in the region and our treatment of allies, and it's challenging, I think, not only for Australia but for other allied nations as well. But that doesn't mean that you abandon it or substantially rethink it. I think it just requires a certain nimbleness and adaptation, at least through this administration.
Do you suspect that President Trump and his administration are rethinking, though, some of the fundamental pillars of that relationship? He's been pretty lukewarm or sort of even non-committal as to how he feels or if he thinks about AUKUS, for example. There's been threats reportedly of kicking Canada out from the Five Eyes agreement.
Yeah, I think this president is willing to take everything to an ultimate, at least in terms of a negotiating strategy. And so he puts everything on the table, including things that we've always considered fairly safe and to diplomats like me, sacred. But that's a negotiating style. And in terms of his willingness to maintain those positions beyond the negotiation, we've seen that with Canada and with Mexico, that he announced tariffs. He launched tariffs, he unlaunched tariffs, he relaunched them, then he stepped back from them, then he relaunched them again, then he doubled them, then he didn't double them. So there's, for him, it's all negotiation, which I think is very different from how we've treated allies in the past, and it's unsettling for them, but it's a personal style as opposed to a reflection of overall U.S. policy.
As a former ambassador, I'm not sure how specifically you want to answer this question, but would you have any advice for the current U.S. ambassador to Australia?
Well, I don't think we have a current ambassador nominated or confirmed yet, so I couldn't tell what sort of advice that they might want or need. I do think that one of the challenges for anyone stepping into that role is going to be recognizing that Australia is a critical partner for us around the world, that is now somewhat rattled, and walking the line between reassuring our allies and yet at the same time not doing so in a way which puts them in an awkward position with the administration. Which really,
is there an
opportunity? One voice.
Yeah, I'm wondering if there is an opportunity here for China as well. We've seen the relationship between China and Australia improve. China's relationship with Canada is still somewhat fraught, but is there an opportunity to bring these non-US partners together? And I'm thinking particularly in terms of a trade bloc like the CPTPP, which China would like to gain admittance to. Do you think there's a greater role for these sorts of blocs that exclude the US?
Well, I'd certainly hope not. I think the United States made a mistake in not joining TPP and creating opportunities for other trade blocs to even exist. So I'm not a fan of our partners rethinking their expansion into different trade blocs. My general sense is that the U.S. is mostly focused on strategic competition with China. And in my view, the United States should be relying heavily upon the partners and allies that we have in the region to ensure that our values are well represented in the region and that we are stronger together. So to the extent that the administration is not communicating that, I hope that over time we'll see that from other parts of the administration and certainly from the leadership in the embassy.
Ambassador, last week we had a conversation with the former Australian Prime Minister Malcolm Turnbull. He made some comments and gave his views when it comes to the opportunity that might be arising for China, to which President Trump really pretty quickly expressed his ire to these comments. Take a listen.
I think China will take advantage, massive advantage of Trump. What my prediction will be that President Xi will aim to be the exact opposite of Trump. Where Trump is chaotic, he will be consistent. Where Trump is rude and abusive, he'll be respectful. Where Trump is erratic, he will be consistent. And what that will do is build trust with countries, and there'll be many countries who will, looking at China on the one hand and Trump on the other, will find China a more attractive partner.
And a couple of things from that. I wonder if you can see the reasons why perhaps that statement, or perhaps who it came from, really stoked the big reaction from President Trump. And is there an element of truth to that, with a globally receding United States, Beijing would love to take that opportunity to step up on the global stage?
I wouldn't presume to get inside Donald Trump's head, and it's not a place where I want to spend a lot of time. I would say that China is always looking for opportunities and to create wedges between the United States and its allies and partners. So I think President Xi will use lots of different devices to accomplish that. Some of it will be, as former Prime Minister Turnbull said, using some respect for these countries, looking for small wins and gains and cooperation in order to warm up those relationships, and trying to create a contrast between some of the rhetoric that's coming from the White House. So I do think that maybe you could say it in a way which wouldn't antagonize the president quite as much, but I think the point is a valid one. And in terms of how the president approaches China, he's sort of between two approaches. On the one hand, he seems to really want to have a great power relations where Russia, China, the United States are speaking to each other as respectful peers, and that each of them can do whatever they want in their spheres of influence. But on the other hand, he's also provoking China with tariffs and trade war and rhetoric. So it's unclear exactly what kind of relationship he's trying to form with China and what counter reactions that's going to create for Xi Jinping.